Hey guys, what's going on? Shaw here, and today in this video we're going to be taking a look at Rocketspark and Borka in the Grimrail Depot instance. While it's a fairly easy fight, it's important to know what's going on so you can have the easy time progressing through this dungeon. If you have any cool tricks or tips for this boss or any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments below. Per usual, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe if you'd like to see more content like this. Enjoy the video. Before we get into it, quick disclaimer, the strategy I talk about in this video is subject to change throughout the season. It's a hard truth that content creators don't know anything. Alright, these two goofballs can be found shortly after starting the dungeon, and while their mechanics are quite elementary, if your team isn't careful, you can easily wipe. This is a council fight and they do not share health. Rocketspark has two main abilities, including the VX-18B Target Eliminator and the X-2101A Missile Barrage. That's a lot of numbers. In a more simple sense, the Target Eliminator will be used while Rocketspark is on the ground and will leave a targeted circle under each party member that will detonate a few seconds later. Make sure you're not standing in this. The Missile Barrage will occur while Rocketspark is actually on top of the crates and or scaffolding. During this time, he will cause damage to a few players in your party that ramps up in damage by 2% every 2 seconds. Your healer and group needs to be ready with healing cooldowns and personal defenses, especially on high tyrannical keys. This will kill your group unless you are able to knock him down to the ground. This is where Borka comes in handy. Borka, similar to Rocketspark, has two main abilities. This includes Slam, which deals physical damage to all players in the encounter space, and it'll silence any casters for 1.5 seconds if they're caught casting. He will also cast Mad Dash while Rocketspark is located above the ground on the scaffolding. The tank needs to aim the dash at Rocketspark to interrupt his missile barrage, and to open up an 8-second damage window where Rocketspark will take 100% increased damage. Before the dash, it's imperative that no one but the tank is in between Borka and Rocketspark. This rotation will happen roughly every 40 seconds until Rocketspark is below 30% health, where he will continuously cast better positioning, which will have Rocketspark jumping around the room every few seconds. Alright, with the abilities out of the way, let's talk about general strategy and positioning. So let's get into the breakdown. While engaging this encounter, the tank needs to make sure they are attacking Borka first, and treating him as the primary target. Rocketspark doesn't have a threat table, since all of his abilities are group targeted. Also, I've seen Borka just instantly kill melee players. Oops. While getting cleave onto both bosses is important, Rocketspark tends to jump around every few seconds, which makes it extremely annoying for melee players and ground-based damaging abilities. I recommend keeping Borka in the center of the room to keep positioning consistent. This allows for your DPS to send their major CDs like Spear of Bastion, Wild Spirits, Earthquake, Frozen Orb, etc. and fully utilize their damage. Now, while keeping Borka still is better than trying to catch up to Rocketspark, there are a few positions in the room where Rocketspark tends to jump to. These positions are located here. From all of my runs so far, I've noticed 5 primary locations that Rocketspark will jump to, and more often than not, Rocketspark tends to jump 2 locations away, meaning he will never jump right next to a different location. He'll normally be going to the opposite corner of the room. So if you want to optimize your positioning, I recommend holding Borka here until Rocketspark casts Missile Barrage. Once he leaves the arena, drag Borka to Rocketspark and face him at the wall. The Mad Dash will drop Rocketspark to the ground, causing him to take 100% increased damage for 8 seconds. This is a fine spot to Lust or Hero if you decided to hold it. After this, you'll want to continue the same rotation as before. Since they don't share a health pool, it's imperative that your group focuses damage onto the higher health targets. Ideally, these two will fall at the same time. With the breakdown out of the way, let's take a look at this in action. So this was a Tyrannical 20 Grimrail Depot on the first week of the season, which was actually really odd for our casters since they had to not only deal with the slam mechanic silencing them, but also quaking. While it's not a perfect kill attempt, there are a few things that I would like to talk about. So we started the boss fight tagging Borka here, and I'm dragging him over to Rocketspark early because we did decide to commit Lust to the first. Now, as you notice, Rocketspark is going to kind of jump to the counter opposite side of the room, and I'm holding Borka towards the center so we can kind of optimize cleave, and very shortly into the fight, he jumps up on top of the barrels to start casting Rocket Barrage. After that, we're going to spread for quaking. So one thing I want to point out here is that our Demon Hunter actually ended up dying to the Mad Dash here because of the way that the hitbox works. Now, it's a little fidgety for melee players, so I recommend backing up right before the cast goes off. Unfortunately, Demon Hunters are a very mobile, sporadic class, so it actually ended up clipping him there. So melee players, just be careful. And of course, the tank, you're going to want to use a decent defensive when that's going off because it does do a fair bit of damage to you. We did decide to commit the battle res, and now I'm trying to keep the Brute on top of Rocketspark whenever I get the opportunity. So right now I'm not chasing, I'm keeping him still because Rocketspark will be jumping back over to the other side of the room very soon. He's now back up on top of the scaffolding and or barrels, so we're going to do the same exact thing here. We're going to be aiming Borka at the wall. The mad dash goes off, and our shaman actually ended up going down because he wasn't able to top himself inside. He did have astral shift available, but he didn't end up using it. So Rocketspark burn phase is happening. I'm still keeping Borka a little bit off center because we want to make sure that we're doing enough damage to both of them. So I'm going to keep Borka in the center of the room because I don't want to chase. He's going to now leap to the other end of the room right away after that better positioning. He's going to cast his Eliminator, and then he's going to shift position again. So as you can see, he then flies over to this barrel here, and we're going to just aim Borka right into the wall. The mad dash is going to go off. We commit Link and Darkness, and then we're going to keep these mobs right on top of each other. We're going to get a good bit of burn here, and then I'm going to start moving Borka back to the center of the room. We want to make sure we're keeping an eye on both Rocketspark's health and Borka's health. So I'm inching over to get some extra cleave during my incarnation window, and as you can see, he jumps to the opposite side of the room. So chasing him can get a little bit annoying, but our goal is to push him sub 30% health here. So he did end up queuing up his mechanic, so he did jump on top of the barrel, which is actually ends up being pretty good for us. So we're going to get the mad dash to face the wall, which will open up another burn phase. Now our DPS are swapping back to Rocketspark while he's vulnerable to this extra damage, and we're getting even cleave in here. Every time this slam goes off, casters need to make sure that they stop their casting, or when they finish their cast, they're not queuing up another spell. And now we're keeping Borka somewhat in the center of the room and just making sure range are swapping to Rocketspark and melee are mostly staying on the Brute. As you can see here, it's kind of annoying for both myself and our melee DPS to kind of run back and forth, but we're just trying to get extra damage out. But as you can see, Rocketspark is not jumping back on top to cast his missile barrage. He's only casting better position followed by the targeting missiles. So here I'm going to try to keep them a little bit more split, and we're going to just focus on whoever we need to. Unfortunately, the enraged slam went off right at the wrong time, so we did end up seating our priest, but that is a-okay. And the boss goes down. So while not the most perfect attempt in the world, we had a few deaths. This was the first week of the season. A lot of us were still sub 280 item level during this run, so fairly impressive. Unfortunately, we didn't end up timing this key. The last boss gave us a lot of trouble, especially because most of us haven't seen it. So this was a pretty good attempt though. There is a little bit of a bug with the mad dash hitbox, so melee DPS need to be super careful. And of course, use your defensive cooldowns whenever that missile barrage ends up coming out. Outside of that, boss fight's pretty easy. Hopefully this guide helped. Hope you guys learned something, and I will catch you guys all in the next one. Take care.